Rain lashed the windshield as I drove those winding streets, the wipers slashing back the blur. My heart thudded against my ribs, heavy with the weight of secrets buried in yellowed pages. I'd come for her words, that forgotten poet whose verses hinted at loves the world had tried to erase. The estate appeared through the downpour, secluded and shadowed. I knocked, the sound echoing into silence. The door creaked open to dim light and swirling dust. Her gaze met mine, steady, guarded. Something pulled at me, immediate and sharp. I stepped inside. The air hung thick with old paper and an unspoken weight that settled in my chest. The estate loomed ahead, its stone walls weathered by decades of wind and neglect. Vines clinging to the facade like forgotten memories that refused to let go. I've mapped this route on my laptop back in the city, fingers tapping keys in the sterile glow of my apartment. But seeing it now pressed the isolation close, the trees crowding the drive like silent witnesses. Gravel crunched under my tires, each turn pulling me deeper into this rural quiet, far from the hum of lectures and deadlines that defined my days. I gripped the wheel tighter, my notebook tucked under my arm, filled with questions I'd honed like weapons. Queries about lineage, about hidden lines in poems that spoke of women loving women in shadows. These were my walls, built high from years of academic distance, protecting the raw parts of me that still ached from old betrayals, from a love that had crumbled under the weight of my own guarded heart. I parked near the entrance, the rain easing to a drizzle that dotted the hood. Stepping out, the air felt heavy, laced with earth and decay, the kind that seeped into your clothes and lingered. My boots sank slightly into the wet gravel as I approached the heavy oak door, its hinges rusted at the edges. This wasn't just research. It was a pilgrimage, to uncover a queer voice erased from the canon, a poet whose family had guarded her archive like a family secret. My pulse quickened again, not just from the chill, but from the thrill of proximity to something real, something that could rewrite the narratives I'd studied for years. The door opened before my knock fully faded, and there she was, Alara, though I didn't know her name yet. She stood in the threshold, her frame solid against the dim interior, hands ink-stained and steady at her sides. Her eyes, sharp with caution, scanned me from head to toe, taking in the city coat, the notebook clutched like a shield. Dark hair pulled back simply, a few strands escaping to frame her face, marked by lines that spoke of long hours bent over fragile documents. She wore a linen shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, revealing forearms dusted with faint scars from paper cuts or perhaps the sharper wounds of solitude. "You're the scholar from the university," she said, her voice low and measured, carrying the faint lilt of someone who'd grown up in these parts, where words were chosen carefully, like handling brittle leaves. Not a question, but an assessment. I nodded, extending my hand, feeling the damp from the rain transfer to her palm, warm, calloused from years of turning pages, not the soft grip of academic handshakes I knew. "Dr. Lena Voss," I replied, keeping my tone professional, the intellectual armor slipping into place. "Thank you for allowing access. The poet's work, it's crucial to my book on erased queer voices." She stepped aside, gesturing me in with a tilt of her head. "Alara Kane. The archive's mine to keep. Family legacy." Her words carried weight, a quiet claim to the secrets housed here. As I crossed the threshold, the sensory shift hit me, the musty scent of shelves lined with leather-bound volumes, the faint lavender drifting from her sleeve, cutting through the dust like a hidden bloom. It was subtle, that floral note, perhaps from soap or a sachet tucked among the papers to ward off moths. But it pulled at something in me, softening the edges of my resolve just a fraction. The foyer opened to a hallway lined with portraits, women in faded sepia, staring out with eyes that held unspoken stories. Ilara led the way, her steps even on the creaking floorboards, pointing out the archive room without flourish. "This way. Rules are simple. Gloves for the originals, no photos without permission, and everything back exactly as found." Her caution lingered in the air, a guardian's vigilance, and I wondered what losses had forged it. Family ties to the poet, perhaps? Or the burden of preserving what others had tried to bury. We entered the archive, a long room with high ceilings and walls of oak shelves groaning under the weight of boxes and folios. Lamplight pooled on a central table, casting shadows that danced like half-formed thoughts. I set my notebook down, the leather cover thumping softly, and felt the internal conflict stir. This was my domain. Distance, analysis, the safety of footnotes and citations. I'd built my career on it, after the breakup that left me questioning every vulnerability, every time I'd let someone close, only to watch them fade like ink on poor paper. Alara's presence complicated that. She moved with purpose, pulling a volume from a shelf, her fingers deft and sure. The lavender scent followed her, mingling with the dry rustle of pages. "Start here," she said, sliding the box toward me, her eyes meeting mine briefly, guarded but with a flicker of curiosity that mirrored my own buried wants. I thanked her, gloved hands trembling slightly as I lifted the lid. The intellectual distance felt necessary, a barrier against the pull I sensed already, the way her steadiness contrasted my city's frantic pace. Yet as she lingered in the doorway, watching, the air thickened with possibility. I settled at the desk, the chair groaning under me, and turned the first pages under the lamplight's warm glow. The poet's script flowed across the paper, raw and intimate. Words that whispered of touches in hidden gardens, of loves that defied the era's cold gaze. My pen scratched notes, but Alara's silhouette in the periphery tugged at my focus, her quiet guardianship weaving into the story I sought to uncover. The rain pattered against the window, sealing us in this world of dust and secrets. And for the first time, my walls felt thinner than the vellum before me. The pages lay yellowed before me, edges frayed like the hems of old dresses. The poet's ink faded, but fierce. Her words spilled across the lines, raw confessions of hidden desires. Nights spent tracing the curve of a lover's shoulder in moonlight. Touches stolen in attics where the world couldn't reach. I leaned closer, the lamplight casting a golden pool on the vellum, my breath shallow, as if speaking too loud might shatter the fragile script. These weren't just verses, they were fragments of a queer life the historians had scrubbed clean. Loves that burned bright against the era's gray prohibitions. My pen flew across the notebook, capturing phrases that twisted in my gut. Her hand on my waist, a secret heavier than stone. It echoed the silences I'd known, the ones I'd buried under footnotes and lectures. Alara moved quietly behind me, her footsteps soft on the worn rug, pulling another folio from the shelf. Her voice came low, like the rustle of turning fragile leaves. She wrote that during the war years, letters smuggled in book bindings. She set the box down, close enough that her sleeve brushed the table's edge, releasing that faint lavender again, now mingled with the sharp tang of aged glue. I glanced up, her face half-shadowed, eyes fixed on the page as if guarding it from my gaze. She pointed to a marginal note, her fingers steady. Here. That's her code for the woman in the next town. They met at market days, pretending to haggle over apples. Her tone held no flourish, just the weight of knowing, passed down through bloodlines that had kept these truths locked away. I nodded, gloved fingers tracing the script, the leather creaking softly. The discoveries piled up, diary entries scrawled in haste, describing dances where skirts swirled to hide clasped hands, poems folded into envelopes addressed to no one. Erasure stared back from every gap, lines crossed out by censors or time, lives reduced to whispers. My notes filled fast, pages turning under my hands, but Alara's presence lingered in the periphery, a quiet anchor amid the storm of words. She didn't hover exactly, but circled the room like a sentinel, reshelving a volume here, dusting a spine there, her movements deliberate, unhurried. The rain outside picked up, drumming the panes in a rhythm that matched the churn in my chest, pulling me deeper into this hidden world. Hours slipped by, the light shifting from afternoon gray to evening dim. I uncovered a bundle of photographs tucked in a drawer. Sepia women with linked arms, smiles defiant against the camera's stare, backgrounds blurred to protect identities. One image caught me. The poet, young and fierce-eyed, arm around another whose face had been scratched away, leaving only a ghost outline. Family did that, Alara said from across the room, her voice cutting the quiet. After she died, to keep the peace. She approached then, leaning over the table to peer at the photo, her breath warm near my ear. Our hands brushed over the shared document, hers ungloved for a moment, rough from years of handling relics, mine protected by the thin barrier. The warmth seeped through, unexpected, a jolt that spread up my arm, settling low in my belly. I pulled back too quickly, the glove catching on the paper's edge. Focus, I told myself, pen scratching harder. This was work, not distraction, the intellectual pursuit that kept the raw edges at bay. Doubts surfaced, sharp as thorns. Why did her nearness pull like gravity, making the air feel charged, the archive smaller? I'd come for the poet's truths, not to unravel my own guarded lines, the ones drawn after Elena left, calling me too distant, too wrapped in books to touch. Alara straightened, oblivious or not, and moved to the window, peering at the darkening sky. Storm's building, roads will flood soon. Her words hung there, practical, but laced with something softer. The power flickered then, the lamp stuttering, shadows leaping across the shelves like startled birds. We both froze. The room plunged briefly into twilight murk before the bulb hummed back to life. My heart thudded, the brief dark amplifying the isolation, the way the estate sealed us from the world beyond. Ilara lit a backup lantern, its flame steadying the glow, and set it near the table. Keeps going like this, you might need to stay. The invitation extended subtly, her eyes meeting mine over the light, guarded still, but with a question flickering there, mirroring the one stirring in me. Evening deepened outside, the rain a relentless curtain, and as I turned back to the pages, her presence wove tighter into the narrative, blurring the lines between research and the pull of something alive, immediate, in the dim. The letters unfolded like fragile wings, sealed with wax long cracked, the poet's script looping in hurried strokes that spoke of forbidden love. I spread them across the table, the lantern's flame flickering shadows over ink that bled confessions. Nights in hidden parlors, whispers against collarbones, a hand slipping under lace in the hush of a carriage. I taste her on the wind, one read, a storm we cannot outrun. These were no polished sonnets. They were gasps of desire, loves that society had branded sin, now preserved in this dim room like embers banked against the cold. My fingers hovered, gloved and distant, tracing the words that mirrored the ache I'd locked away. The thrill of touch I'd denied myself since Elena, since the quiet unraveling of promises in a city apartment, leaving me armored in analysis and solitude. Alara returned with a stack of envelopes, her steps measured, setting them down with care. She lingered this time, pulling a chair to the table's edge, her knee inches from mine under the wood. These are the ones she burned half of, she said, voice low, threaded with something raw. Family found them in the attic after. My great-aunt was the poet, kept them from the fire, but not from the weight. Her fingers brushed a letter's edge, calluses rough against the paper, and for the first time, her caution cracked. She spoke of ties that bound her here, the estate passed down through women who'd guarded secrets like heirlooms, grandmothers silencing tongues to survive, mothers whispering warnings about loves that could shatter homes. Her voice broke on the personal, a hitch when she mentioned her own loss, the partner who'd left years back, unable to bear the archive's shadows, the endless vigil over stories that demanded solitude. She said it swallowed me whole, Alara murmured, eyes on the flame, not me. Maybe it did. I watched her then, the way her shoulders tensed under the linen, the faint scar on her knuckle catching the light. Parallels emerged sharp as thorns. The poet's guarded heart, penning desires she never voiced aloud, echoed my own. I'd built my life on distance, dissecting loves from afar in lectures and books, fearing the burn of anything close. Elena had called it that once. My heart a locked case, keys buried in footnotes. Here, amid these letters, the reflection stung. Alara's loss mirrored mine. Not in city lights, but in this rural quiet. Both of us, keepers of what hurt most. The rain hammered the windows now, relentless sheets blurring the world outside. The estate sealing us tighter, its walls creaking like breaths held too long. Late hours blurred, the lantern oil low, casting the room in amber pools. Ilara rose, her chair scraping soft. "Coffee," she said, not a question, and disappeared into the adjoining alcove, a nook off the archive with sagging shelves and a small stove. I followed, drawn by the scent of grounds brewing, rich and grounding against the musty air. She handed me a mug, steam curling up, our fingers meeting, hers calloused, warm from the pot's handle, mine cool and tentative. The graze sparked something, a jolt that ignited my guarded walls, heat spreading slow from the contact, settling in my chest like embers stirred. We sat on mismatched stools, the alcove shadowed, lugs warming palms as the storm raged. Conversation wove through the poet's world, her lovers coded replies, the risk of a glance too long at village gatherings, but it drifted, edges softening, to the weight we carried. Ilara's eyes met mine over the rim, dark and searching, the lavender from her sleeve faint now, overpowered by coffee's bite. Fear whispered insistent. This pull threatened everything. Vulnerability cracking the researcher's objectivity, turning notes into something personal, alive. I've come to uncover history, not to feel its echo in my pulse, in the way Ilara's laugh lines deepened when she spoke of the poet's defiance. The rain sealed us from the world, thunder rumbling distant, amplifying the quiet between sips. The brush of her knee against mine accidental, then not. My mind raced. Focus on the letters, on the book that waited back home. But her steadiness tugged, chipping at the armor I'd worn like gloves. What if this archive held more than paper, more than erasure? The thought terrified, thrilling in equal measure, as the night deepened outside. Night fell heavy, the storm's roar fading to a steady patter, and our words turned intimate, the alcove's shadows drawing us closer, boundaries thinning like mist on glass. The poet's journal lay open on the alcove table, its leather cover cracked like dry earth, pages filled with script that twisted tighter as the entries deepened. I turned the leaves slow, the paper whispering under my fingers, and there it was. Betrayal laid bare in hurried ink. Words scrawled after a lover's desertion. Promises shattered like glass underfoot. She chose the light of day over our shadows, the poet wrote, her lines fracturing into fragments of rage and ache. Loves hidden in attics now crumbling under the weight of abandonment. The words hit close, mirroring the scars I'd carried since Elena. Her quiet exit from our shared bed, suitcase in hand, eyes avoiding mine as she murmured about my distance. My nights lost in books that kept her at arm's length. I'd nodded then, let her go without a fight, burying the hurt in syllabi and citations. But here, in the flickering light, it resurfaced raw, the journal's confessions echoing my own silenced grief. Ilara shifted beside me, her mug set down with a soft clink, the steam fading into the chill. She watched the page, her breath even, then spoke low, the words pulling from a place deep as roots. That betrayal broke her. Wrote less after, guarded everything tighter. The archive's weight. It's like that for me too. Her confession came halting, voice threading through the quiet like smoke. Solitude was her shield, she said, chosen after her partner's leaving, not just a walkout, but a vanishing into the city lights, unable to carry the estate's burdens, the endless sorting of lives that demanded silence over sharing. I stay here because it's safe, she added, eyes on the embers in the alcove stove, where a small fire crackled now, flames licking the logs we'd fed earlier. No one gets close enough to leave again. The papers don't judge, don't fade. Her hands folded in her lap, knuckles whitening, the ink stains dark against her skin, and I saw the parallel sharp, the way we'd both armored ourselves, me in theories, her in dust and legacy. We moved then to the worn couch in the corner of the archive, its fabric sagging from years of use, cushions molded by bodies long gone. Ilara lit the fire higher, the glow spilling warm across the chilled air, chasing shadows from the shelves. I sank into the seat beside her, close enough to feel the heat from her frame, the faint lavender clinging to her shirt now warmed by the flames. The storm outside picked up, wind rattling the panes, but inside, the isolation amplified the shared silence, wrapping us like a heavy quilt. I shared fragments of my city life, words spilling slow at first. Lectures to empty rooms, dinners alone with takeout and drafts. The way Elena's absence left echoes in my apartment. Furniture too big for one. I tell myself it's focus, I said, voice low against the fire's pop. The work matters, uncovering voices like hers. But it's easier than letting anyone see the cracks. Walls thinned slowly as I spoke, the intellectual distance fraying, each admission peeling back a layer, exposing the loneliness I'd dressed in purpose. Alara listened, her head tilted, eyes reflecting the orange light, empathy pulling at me like the tide. She didn't interrupt, just nodded when I paused, her presence steady, unyielding. Sounds like exile, she murmured finally, her hand shifting on the couch, resting light on my knee. Contact electric, calluses rough through the fabric of my pants, sending a shiver up my thigh that had nothing to do with the draft. The touch lingered, warm and intentional, grounding the churn in my chest, and I didn't pull away. Her fingers stayed, thumb tracing a small circle, the gesture simple but loaded, bridging the space between us. Thunder rolled outside, deep and rumbling, shaking the estate's bones, the isolation pressing closer, sealing our words in this glow. Internal debate raged, silent. Pursue the truth in the pages, the safe lines of research that kept me whole, or embrace this feeling, the pull of her hand, her gaze that saw through the armor to the woman who'd lost too much. The journal's betrayal stared from the table, a warning of what closeness cost. Yet Alara's touch whispered otherwise, vulnerability not as fracture, but as mend. Fear twisted with want, the fire's warmth mirroring the heat building low in me, her knee now brushing mine, the air thick with unsaid things. The poet had chosen shadows over light, but here, in this unfolding, I wondered if the reverse held, stepping into the glow, risking the burn for something real. Thunder faded to echoes, the silence between us full, charged. Her hand still on my knee, steady as the flames. Touch lingered as the fire settled, boundaries blurring in the dim light, the archive's shadows softening around us. We rose from the couch as the fire died to coals, embers glowing faint in the grate. Alara took my hand, her palm rough against mine, leading me through a side door I hadn't noticed before. "There's more," she said, voice low in the dim. Hidden rooms the family sealed off. The archive's main chamber gave way to a narrow corridor, stone walls cool under my free hand, the air thicker here, undisturbed dust hanging like veils. She flicked on a flashlight, its beam slicing the dark, dust motes dancing in the light like sparks from a struck match. We stepped into the first room, shelves crammed with forgotten crates, papers spilling from lids, unsorted relics, the poet's early drafts mixed with ledgers of estate debts, lives tangled in ink. Alara's laugh came rare then, soft against the stone walls, triggered by a bundle of pressed flowers tucked in a journal, petals brittle as whispers. She collected these from their walks, she said, the sound rumbling low, unexpected warmth cutting the chill. It pulled me closer, our shoulders brushing, as she shone the light on faded sketches, women's profiles, lines soft and intimate, hints of lips and eyes that spoke of stolen glances. The beam trembled slightly in her grip, or perhaps it was my pulse echoing, the isolation of these hidden spaces amplifying every shift, every breath shared in the narrow confines. Her free hand grazed my arm, steadying me over an uneven floorboard, calluses scraping lightly through my sleeve, sending heat coiling low in my gut. We moved deeper, the flashlight's glow pooling on alcoves lined with stacks of forgotten words, manuscripts yellowed, envelopes sealed with hearts drawn in wax. In one shadowed corner, amid towering piles, she turned to me, the light catching her eyes, dark and searching. The air hummed, charged with the day's confessions, the night's blurring lines. I stepped closer, drawn by the lavender faint on her skin, mixed now with the dry scent of paper. Our gazes locked, the space between us shrinking until her breath warmed my lips. The kiss came tentative, lips meeting soft amid the stacks, her mouth yielding, then pressing, tasting of coffee and something deeper, unspoken. My hands found her waist, fingers curling into the linen, pulling her nearer as the flashlight clattered to the floor, beam spinning wild before steadying on our feet. Pleasure built slow, bodies pressing in the alcove shadows, her hands sliding up my back, calluses mapping the curve of my spine through fabric. I gasped into her mouth, the stone wall cool against my shoulders as she leaned me back, her thigh slipping between mine, friction sparking heat that spread like ink in water. Touches deepened, fingers unbuttoning, skin meeting skin in the dim, her breath ragged against my neck, lips trailing fire down my collarbone. The archive faded, shelves silent witnesses to this unraveling. My walls crumbling under her steady hands, vulnerability flooding in waves that matched the building ache. We sank to the floor amid scattered pages, quilts of dust and paper cushioning us, bodies entwining urgent yet tender. Her weight grounding me as release crested shared and shuddering, echoes fading into the stone quiet. Morning light filtered through a high grate, gray and insistent, pulling me from tangled limbs. Alara slept beside me, her arm draped heavy across my hip, breath even in the chill. Doubts flooded then, sharp as the draft seeping from cracks. Commitment echoing old losses, Elena's suitcase by the door, her voice calling me absent even in the same room. This night, raw and real, terrified me. What if Alara's world swallowed me, turned research into entanglement, left me exposed when the city called back? I shifted, her eyes opening slow, dark and soft in the dawn. "Stay," she murmured, hand tracing my side, but the warmth clashed with the knot in my chest, fear whispering of erasure. Not just the poet's, but ours. Love's hidden only to vanish. My phone buzzed from the archive proper, insistent vibration cutting the hush, work demands piling, emails from colleagues querying my absence, a department head's note on the upcoming conference, the city's pull tugging like chains. I silenced it, but the screen's glow lingered, reminders of lectures waiting, grants depending on this research's clean lines. Ilara watched, propping on an elbow, her gaze questioning the tension in my frame. "The world outside?" she asked, voice rough from sleep, fingers stilling on my skin. Fear haunted us both then, the erasure of what we'd uncovered, not in ink, but in flesh. The risk of stepping from shadows, only to be scrubbed away by expectations, by distances we'd both chosen long ago. Her eyes held mine, vulnerable under the caution, mirroring my churn. Could this intimacy survive the light? Or would it fade, like the poet's coded words? The morning stretched, coffee brewing in the alcove, but words built heavy between sips, doubts sharpening into edges. Argument brewed over the archive's secrets and our hearts, the stone walls closing in as truths demanded air. The argument ignited in the alcove, words sharp as shattered glass amid the cooling coffee. I stood by the table, phone clutched like a lifeline. Its screen dark now, but heavy with the city's demands. Emails stacking like accusations, a colleague's query on my progress, the conference looming like a judgment. "This isn't just research anymore," I said, voice cracking against the stone. "It's us, tangled in it. What if I publish, expose her, your family's secrets? Or worse, what if I stay and lose myself here, like the poet did?" Alara paced, her boots thudding soft on the rug, face hardening in the morning light slanting through the grate. She stopped at the far shelf, pulling a final box with deliberate hands, dust billowing like smoke. "This is the end of it," she said, low and edged, setting the ledger down. The poet's final erasure confronted us then, pages torn, entries blacked out in thick ink, her last words to her lover reduced to smears. Gone into silence, for us both. The bond she'd forged, fragile as spider silk, snapped under betrayal. Family pressures forcing her hand, loves buried to preserve the name. It paralleled ours stark, this fragile thread we'd woven in shadows. My city pulling, her archive anchoring, both of us teetering on exposure. See? Alara pressed, finger jabbing the page. She chose distance to survive. Erased herself to keep the peace. That's what you're facing now. Me, this place, or your safe world of words on paper. Her words landed heavy, but she withdrew then, stepping back, arms crossing tight over her chest like a barrier rebuilt. The scars surfaced raw in her eyes, not just the poet's, but her own. Family abandonment etched deep. A mother who'd fled the estate young, leaving Alara to inherit the vigil alone. Whispers of queer shame driving her away. They all leave, she murmured, voice fracturing, gaze dropping to the floor. Partner, kin, saw the weight here and ran. I'm the fool who stays, guarding ghosts. You will too, when the road's clear. Her shoulders slumped, the guardian cracking, vulnerability spilling like ink from a tipped bottle. The air thickened, charged with her pain, mirroring my churn. The fear that intimacy meant loss, that choosing her would echo Elena's quiet exit, suitcase echoing in the hall. Thunder cracked outside, the storm peaking fierce, wind howling through cracks like accusations. Rain lashed the windows in sheets, the estate groaning under the assault. Then the power surged out, plunging us into gray murk, the alcove's single bulb dying with a pop. Darkness swallowed the room, shadows merging until Alara fumbled for candles from a drawer, matches striking sparks that bloomed to flame. She lit 3, wax dripping slow, their flicker dancing on our faces, hers etched with guarded hurt, mine flushed with the debate raging silent. The light wavered, casting eyes hollow, cheeks sharp. The intimacy of night now stripped bare in this unsteady glow. Words spilled raw then, the dark loosening tongues. I can't choose distance anymore, I said, stepping closer, voice trembling against the howl. The poet erased herself to protect what? Emptiness? I've done that. Built walls of notes and lectures, kept you at arm's length like every love before. But this? Us? It's real, terrifying. Dive into vulnerability with me, Alara, or lose it all to safety. She froze, candlelight catching the tear tracking her cheek, her breath hitching. And if it breaks us? Like them? But her eyes searched mine, the flicker revealing the want beneath the fear, the pull toward something beyond guardianship. Our hands clasped tight, fingers lacing desperate, her calluses grounding my tremor. I pulled her near, tears mixing with rain streaking the window behind, salt and storm blurring on the glass. It might, I whispered, forehead to hers, breaths mingling hot in the chill. But hiding breaks us slower. Choose me, us, over the armor. Surrender hit fierce then, her walls crumbling as she surged forward, embraced tight amid the defenses falling. Lips met urgent, bodies pressing in the candle's sway, her arms wrapping my waist, pulling flush, heat building against the cold draft. The storm raged, but inside we yielded, touches mapping scars, vulnerability not fracture but forge, authenticity rising like flame from embers. Resolution glimmered in the hold, intellectual armor shed for this raw truth. Her legacy not burden but bridge, my research alive in shared pulse. No more distance. We'd rewrite the erasures together, fragile bond tempered strong. Dawn broke slow, the estate stirring as light pierced the clouds. Light pierced the clouds, spilling gray, then gold across the estate's stone floors, the storm's remnants dripping from eaves like final confessions. Alara and I rose slow from the alcove floor, bodies marked by night's urgency. Her shirt askew, my hair tangled, skin still humming from shared release. The candles had guttered out, wax pooling hard on the table, but dawn's clarity sharpened everything, the archive's shadows retreating as if yielding to this new light. We didn't speak at first, just gathered scattered pages, her hand brushing mine deliberate now, calluses a steady anchor against the tremor of what we'd chosen. Vulnerability hung between us, not fragile, but forged. The poet's erasures no longer a warning, but a map we'd redraw together. She led me to the kitchen, a room off the main hall with wide windows overlooking sodden gardens, vines heavy with rain. Sunlight slanted in, warming the flagstones as she set the kettle on. Movements unhurried, her linen shirt clinging slightly from the night's damp. I watched her, the curve of her neck exposed as she reached for mugs, the faint freckles there, like hidden constellations. "We'll sort the last boxes today," she said, pouring steaming water, the scent of chamomile rising soft. "You and me. No more distance." Her eyes met mine over the rim, dark and open now, the guardianship softened to partnership. I nodded, taking the mug, our fingers lacing around the ceramic, heat seeping shared. This was the future glimpsed, blending my city's rhythm with her rural vigil. Weekends here turning to weeks, my laptop open beside her ledgers, notes evolving from solitary drafts to collaborative truths. Days blurred after that dawn, the estate awakening under our hands. Morning started with coffee in the alcove, steam curling as we pored over the poet's final fragments. Letters pieced back, betrayals reframed as resilience. Alara's laugh came easier, rumbling low when we'd uncover a coded joke, her arm slung casual over my chair, thigh pressing mine under the table. Afternoons took us to the gardens, overgrown paths where the poet had walked. Weeds parting under our boots, soil dark and yielding as we cleared space for new growth. I'd kneel beside her, gloved hands now ungloved, dirt caking my nails, her guidance patient. "Loosen it here, let the roots breathe." The earth mirrored our healing, grit under skin, a reminder of what we'd unearthed. Not just paper, but selves. Scars from abandonment softening in the sun. Her hand would find my lower back then, thumb circling slow, pulling me up for a kiss that tasted of soil and chamomile. Bodies leaning into the wild. Heat building unhurried against tree trunks. Skirts of vines, our only veil. Evenings by the fire deepened the layers. Quilts draped over the couch, flames crackling as we'd share more. My city scars, Elena's ghost fading in tales of boardroom isolation. Her family fractures, the mother's flight a wound we'd tend with quiet holds. Intimacy wove constant now, her fingers tracing my collarbone as we read aloud, voices blending the poet's words with our own whispers, bodies shifting to press close, legs entwining under fabric. Pleasure came in waves, slow explorations by firelight, her lips on my inner thigh, breath hot, my hands in her hair guiding. Release, shuddering, shared. Afterglow heavy with promise. No more intellectual armor. Authenticity bloomed. My book reshaping with her voice in the margins. Legacy not solitary, but ours. Chosen family rising from dust. The city pulled once. A trip back for lectures, phone buzzing with demands. But I returned sooner, suitcase lighter, Alara waiting at the door, her embrace fierce. We'd split time then. Her visiting my apartment, ink-stained hands on urban sheets, laughter echoing off concrete. Me here, trading footnotes for footpaths. Fears of erasure lingered faint, but choice tempered them. Vulnerability over distance. Hearts guarded no more. The estate felt alive. Windows open to breeze, gardens greening. Our bond, the true archive. Stories unfolding, endless. Sunlight flooded the archive fully now, pages glowing under our hands. The poet's voice alive in the air between us. No more shadows, just this shared light. If this pull toward vulnerability resonates, subscribe for more sapphic stories that uncover hidden hearts. Share in the comments. What walls did you choose to let fall?